Hey everyone, and welcome to the author interview series. And today I have with us Matt Fitzgerald, who is a certified sports nutritionist, a coach, consultant to numerous sports nutrition companies, and author of several books, one of which I've read recently called Diet Cults. So you've written many books, and how many books exactly have you written, Matt?
I have actually lost count. It's in the high 20s now.
Yeah, that's a yeah, and they're all on sports, nutrition, health. So you're quite an expert at you're quite an expert in the industry then.
Yeah, so actually, Diet Cult's the one you've read is the pretty much the only one I've written that is not really for athletes. It's for a general audience, anyone who's interested in healthy eating. So that one was a bit of an outlier for me.
So of the books that you've written, which one was your favorite and why?
Probably my personal favorite is one called Iron War, which it's a sports narrative. So it tells the story of an epic rivalry between two legendary triathletes from the 1980s named Dave Scott and Mark Allen. And so it's a study in their contrasting personalities and the disparate paths they sort of took to the pinnacle of what was then a very young sport. And it's just an amazing multi-layered story. And I'm not congratulating myself by saying that. The story is the story. All I had to do was sort of get out of the way and tell it. And whether you have an interest in triathlon or not, it's really a compelling story. And I just had a blast, trying to bring it to life.
Hmm. Okay. And so, going back to your book, Diet Cults, now you gave a recommendation as to what sort of diet people should be following at the end of the book. You kind of outlined it's kind of, in some sense, like a pyramid, but there is no official picture or anything. But for yourself, is that the diet that you currently follow?
Yeah, well, I mean, my name for it is Agnostic Healthy Eating, and I mean what that is. It's not it's not a diet per se in the sense that lots of other diets are. Basically, it's my understanding of the rules you really can't get away with breaking, and it's as simple as that. With all the disagreements out there in public discourse about how people should eat. Nutrition scientists, the serious folks, the ones who are, really trying to study, what foods and eating patterns make people healthier and which ones don't. There's kind of a general consensus about, how you should eat, and it's not rigidly defined. It's sort of like a set of parameters you have to operate within, and that's all agnostic healthy eating is. It's just sort of, it's just, it's again, it's basically the rules you can't get away with breaking according to the best and latest science.
Hmm.
And it is the way I eat, yes.
Okay, all right. And so, from as far as you know, is there a test that people can take to know exactly what it is that they should or shouldn't eat, or what sort of diet they should follow? And how does one know exactly what to follow?
Yeah, so you know, much is made of like metabolic individuality, but I think, and it's real. Each one of us is genetically unique. We have a unique life history, but we're also all human. And I think there are some universals in human nutrition, and that's what agnostic healthy eating is. It's basically your starting point. So you can have two people who, quote unquote, are agnostic healthy eaters who don't eat any of the same foods, whose diets, at least on the surface, don't look anything like each other, because there's lots of room to find like sort of your own best place within that framework. So it's not like one size fits all in the sense that everyone's diet looks exactly the same, like everyone has the same foods on their plate. So part of finding your own place within that framework, it's just a matter of preferences. You can sort of have certain you can have a cultural cuisine that you were brought up on that you prefer, that is familiar to you. That's fine. Stick with it, because all the world's major cultural cuisines can obey the rules of agnostic healthy eating. And there are also things like food allergies and intolerances and just weird things you can't really explain, where you don't react well to a food, and no doctor or scientist can really explain why. So there's a little bit of responsibility that falls on the shoulders of the individual to sort of, we all have the same starting point, but if you want to sort of optimize your diet, you have to do a little bit of trial and error, and just practice a little bit of mindfulness with your diet.
So I once heard that Hippocrates used to keep a journal of what he ate. Would you sort of recommend the same sort of thing to others? Just kind of eat certain foods, keep a journal, see how they feel, and kind of like reflect on that?
Yeah, I mean that can be a very useful tool. It's not it's most useful for troubleshooting. So everyone knows the old saw, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So if you're healthy and you feel like you're getting the results you want from your diet, there's no need to keep a journal of that sort. But when something's wrong, if you're having trouble losing weight, or if you're gaining weight, or if you have fatigue issues that you feel might be diet related, or whatever it is, then that sort of exercise can really help you just get organized about trying to figure out what the culprit is in your diet, and finding a workaround.
Okay. And would you say that there are some foods that people don't get enough of in their diet that they're missing out on a daily basis?
Well, there's no single food that everyone needs, but there are certainly food types that a lot of people in at least in our society don't get enough of. I mean, you just look at the research. People do not eat enough fruits and vegetables. That's the big one right there. Most of us eat more than enough meat, more than enough grains. Fruits and vegetables are the big ones that I don't know the exact numbers, but it's a very large percentage of the U.S. population that simply does not eat enough of those food types. But it's up to you which specific fruits and vegetables you want to eat. There's something to be said for variety, but it's not like everyone has to eat apples to be healthy. If you don't like apples, eat pears.
And, well, in your opinion, why do you think that's the case? I know every sort of diet say, you should always be eating fruits and vegetables. I can't think of a diet that says that you shouldn't,
Right.
but why do you think there's that mismatch where a lot of people consume more meats and more carbs as opposed to eating vegetables?
Rats broke up a little bit. I mean, we're back. So I think I got most of your question, Ryan. There's probably more than one reason. I think the biggest reason goes to what scientists refer to as palatability. And I mean, we all know that word, but there's kind of a scientific meaning, which is you can actually quantify the palatability of a food based on how much of it you eat. So there are certain foods that trigger a drive to eat more of them, and that's sort of how palatability is measured. And basically, I mean, it is, in layman's terms, it's how much you like it, how much you like a food, and so there are just certain triggers in our brains that make us certain qualities in foods, particularly high concentrations of both carbohydrate and fat in a single food, because we're sort of wired to find things that have a big payoff in energy. And there's sort of an evolutionary just so story that it can kind of explain why it would be to our advantage to have that preference. So a lot of the foods that are the most palatable are not fruits and vegetables. Like they can be fairly palatable, but potato chips are a lot more palatable. So is pizza. So are fast food burgers. So it's just and there are people who like to say that there was some capitalistic plot to manufacture foods that would be addictive to us. And there's a little bit of something to that, but mostly it's just that we like them. That's why we made them. like this apple, is all right, but you know what? We could come up with something better, and it's a Big Mac. So that's the big thing. And then, of course, there are profit incentives associated with those types of foods. So then they get pushed on us, by corporations. So that's sort of the second layer to it. But the first layer is like we simply don't like fruits and vegetables as much as we like pizza and potato chips.
Yeah, that's. Would you say it's because after eating vegetables, shortly after you get hungry compared to eating, let's just say, a steak?
It's mostly the intrinsic qualities of the food. So when you have things like, carbohydrate and fat, and also salt is another one of them. Like if a food has these properties and then it interacts with your tongue, there are receptors on the tongue that talk to your brain, and your brain says, "Give me more of this." So it doesn't have to do so much with how satiating the food is. Though, I mean, those things they're connected, but it really is just that sort of that neural wiring, the way our brains react to properties of foods.
Ah, I see. Okay. And so I've heard that the Mediterranean diet is the best diet out there. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, at the very beginning of my book, what I lay out the premise that there are all kinds of different diet philosophies out there, or diet cults, as it were, and they all disagree about what the best diet is. But the one thing they all do agree on is that there is such a thing as a single best diet for all people, and what any credible nutrition scientist will tell you is that that's baloney. There is no such thing as a single strictly defined best diet for humans. Because we are nature's ultimate omnivores, so we can't get away with just anything. You can't live off paint. Like you can't just eat anything. But there's a lot of room to work with. So you can be healthy on two diets that don't look very much alike, but that both don't break the rules you can't get away with breaking. And so the Mediterranean diet is just another one of those. It is there's plenty of research to show that there's really no better way to eat, but it is not the best way to eat. You can take all the key foods, the specific foods that make up the Mediterranean diet, and eat none of them and be just as healthy.
Wow.
Just by eating alternative foods, like eating different grains, eating different fruits, different vegetables, just things that come from other parts of the world that aren't the Mediterranean. I mean, think about it. Are only people from the Mediterranean region healthy?
Yeah, that's true. That's a good point. No, that's yeah. And if you put it in those terms, then yeah, that's I never really thought of it that way. But
yeah, there's a concept of have you heard of blue zones?
no, I haven't.
Okay, so blue zones, it's more of a phenomenon than a concept, but blue zones refer to areas in the world, like pockets, small populations where people live unusually long lives. So that's a blue zone. Where there's a much higher than normal percent of the population lives over 80 and even over 100. And scientists have sort of looked for common patterns in blue zones. And what they found is, I mean, it's not just diet, it's also lifestyle and other things, but there are certain common diet patterns, but they're not the same foods. You have blue zones all over the world. So one of them is Sardinia, which is in the Mediterranean, but Okinawa is another one, and it's completely, again, on the surface in terms of the specific foods, it's a completely different diet. So again, speaks to that point where on a general level, there's basically they're both agnostic healthy eating, Okinawa and Sardinia and the other blue zones. It's just so there's the level of generalities where the diets do have to be the same, but on the level of specifics, the surface level, it's fine. You can eat like a Japanese person or a Sardinian and be equally healthy.
Oh, okay. But having said that, so if there really is no best diet, then what are some blanket statements regarding diet that's true for everyone?
Sure. Well, you have to eat enough. I, I mean, that's number one. It really is. I mean, that is, if you could only take one diet rule with you to the proverbial desert island, like that's it. Before you even get into what you eat, you need enough. So, I mean, really, our needs are sort of defined by various specific types of enough. Like, so you need enough protein, you need enough fat. You actually don't need any carbohydrate, but it's highly useful because you can sort of make it. Your body can. You need 22 different. I think it's 22 different vitamins and minerals. And so these are all the things you need, and you need them in certain amounts. It's very hard to figure out like exactly what the optimal amount is. You've heard of like the recommended daily allowance like that, but that's on a population level. But basically, those are the things, those building blocks. You need them, you need enough of them, and you kind of need them in an appropriate balance. Now, how you get there, you can get there obviously without even knowing the first thing about what an amino acid is or what have you. But I mean, just on the most fundamental level, that is the answer to your question. I left out water. You need water. But then there's an almost infinite. There probably is an infinite number of ways that you can satisfy those needs. Whether we're talking about just like maintaining life or just the higher standard of sort of optimizing your health.
Okay, so no examples, no statements such as, "Oh, you shouldn't eat processed foods or junk foods," that wouldn't be included in your blanket statement.
No, I mean if you look at no, no, I mean if you look at there are various ways that you could try to let's say there was like a health Olympics where like medals were given out for the healthiest people. So you didn't have to actually do anything. You just had to submit to a battery of tests that assess your health. So if everyone in the entire world went through this process where their overall health was quantified, and then you looked at the diets of the top 0.001%, the healthiest, say 5,000 people on Earth, almost all of them would eat some junk food. Huh. Almost all of them would do things that like don't actually contribute to their health. So like optimize health, and there's even some reason to believe that actually doing a certain amount of unhealthy things is healthier than never doing any unhealthy things. Huh. So yeah, I mean I get into that in the book with like the chapter on chocolate, wine, and
coffee.
Coffee, yes, yeah. So for example, you can do something that you could drink to intoxication, for example, and maybe do that periodically, like not very often, but every once in a while. So if you look at an example of binge drinking in isolation, that's not healthy, but that's missing the forest for the trees, because that binge episode could make you very happy. Huh. It could be a social occasion, which is good for your health. It could be a stress reliever, which is good for your health. And so all these things, it's a lot more complicated than that. So pleasure, that's sort of what I get into in that chapter, is that pleasure is healthy. And pleasure doesn't always come from things that are quote unquote healthy behaviors. Huh. And so, yeah, I mean, I think it would be a mistake to even aim for perfection.
Wow. Okay. That's very interesting. And so what would you say, or which foods would you say has the biggest bang for your buck in terms of nutritional value?
Well, I mean, it definitely is. I mean, if we're going to talk about just one category of foods, I'm going to say vegetables. It's hard to pick between fruits and vegetables, but vegetables tend to. I mean, it's a very broad category, but by and large, they tend to be a little more well-rounded nutritionally than fruits are. So yeah, I think I think it's probably inarguable that you get like the most overall nutrition, from vegetables as a category of foods. Yeah.
Okay. And what are your thoughts on organic foods?
Yeah. So I mean, shoot, that's a can of worms there. What I love to point out, I mean, I do try to eat organic, and it's tough because some people will point out that corporations are trying to create legal definitions of organic that are almost meaningless. So take something like grass-fed. Like people think if they buy grass-fed beef, they're buying beef from a cow that lived on only grass for its entire life. That's not true. The law allows people to or farmers to raise a cow on whatever, finish it with grass, and then kill it and call it grass-fed. So it's the same. It's the same thing with organic. Like when you look underneath the hood, it's like you almost don't even want to know. Like you're kind of paying for a word. But I think there's just a lot to get into there. I think that like I have fruit trees in my backyard. They're organic. I like to go in that direction. Like I do tend to buy organic fairly often, even knowing what I do about. I'm sort of digressing. The point I often make to people when they ask me this, just like people who just want to know, like, is it worth the money? I point out that all of the research, almost all of the research showing that eating lots of fruits and vegetables is good for your health, makes no distinction between organic and non-organic. So, the proof that those foods are good for you is irrespective of whether pesticides were used or whatever. So, if you can't afford organic or if you're just a little skeptical, you're going to be all right. A non-organic tomato is still better than a Big Mac.
Well, those are some good words to hear. And what are your thoughts on supplements? Do you think everyone should be taking supplements, or should they not take supplements? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, supplements didn't always exist, and humans seem to have gotten by just fine without them. So, broadly speaking, they're simply not necessary. If you have access to a sufficient abundance of healthy foods, they can be conditionally necessary. I mean, there are times. Well, I'll give myself as an example. Right now, I live in California, but right now I'm in Flagstaff, Arizona, training with a team of professional runners, and I am taking an iron supplement because, for various reasons, runners training at high altitude have a tendency to become iron deficient. And so I started taking it prophylactically before I came here. And I was actually initially low when I came here. And without the supplementation, I probably would be really struggling in my training right now. So that's an example. A lot of people are vitamin D deficient, and it doesn't come from your diet really. It comes from, even if it's in a food, it's usually fortified, like milk. The vitamin D is added to that, so it's kind of a supplement in a food. So I don't believe in just like broadly painting a whole category of products as bad or unnecessary, because it's more nuanced than that. So I try to discourage people from using supplementation in place of healthy eating. But supplements are sometimes necessary for some people, and they can also be helpful even in some cases when they aren't strictly necessary.
Okay, well, that's a great point. Everyone's different, yeah, and so and what do you think is more, I guess, important? Would you say diet or nutrition is more important in terms of health?
Um, can you say a little more about what you
Sure,
mean by diet
sure.
versus nutrition?
So some people would argue that, oh, all you have to do is, just eat healthily and you'll be fine. You don't really need to exercise. Some people will say no, exercise is more important than nutrition. Um, would you say one is more
Yeah.
important than the other, or are they? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so it really is hard to separate them. I mean, if you really could only have one, it would have to be a healthy diet.
Hmm.
But I mean, who wants to live that life? Where like, your diet is immaculate, but you never leave your bed.
Hmm.
And of course, I don't mean to be callous. There are some people who not by choice can't leave their bed, but I'm talking about a person who chooses,
Yeah.
not to leave their bed, just who never exerts his or her body. Like, how healthy are you going to be? Not very. And I think I say this in the. I've written too many books. I don't. I can't remember if it's not. But either in that book or another one, I say you are not what you eat. You are what your body does with what you eat.
Huh.
That's an important distinction, because like if you eat broccoli, you don't become part broccoli, do you? Do you turn into broccoli? So you
No.
aren't what you
Yeah.
your body does something with what you eat. And
Hmm.
what your body does with what you eat is strongly influenced by your activity level.
Hmm.
So if you are what your body does with what you eat, what you do with your body has a huge impact on. So if you have two people who have exactly the same diet, and one of them exercises and one of them doesn't, they're not going to get the same results. So it's not all input that determines your health. So it's almost like exercise changes your diet because it changes what your body does with the food you put in it. So I don't see any way, honestly, to really separate them. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. No, for sure. And just as we're kind of finishing up, what's in the works for you, or what are your plans for in the future? Another book, perhaps?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've always got a few in the pipeline. I just love writing, and I'm the kind of person who's very curious and kind of never runs out of ideas. And so I mentioned, kind of what I'm doing now. That is a future book. So, I'm middle aged. I'm 46 years old, and I've been a runner most of my life, but I was never a professional runner. I just wasn't good enough. So, but an Olympian, and I never was. But I've spent the entire summer living and training with professional runners and just gone all in on their entire lifestyle. And I'm training for the Chicago Marathon, which is this coming weekend. So this sort of thing has been done before. Like George Plimpton famously did it in football back in the 1960s, and it became a book called Paper Lion and a movie. But no one's ever done it with running before. So I'm sort of guinea pigging and seeing what comes of it. And it's been an amazing experience. And I actually do think it is of course I would think so, but I think it's going to be a pretty cool story.
Yeah. Yeah. No, for sure. And so, just as we're kind of finishing up, where can people find or connect with you?
Yeah, so I would say the place to start is my personal website, which is mattfitzgerald.org. Someone else has .com. I'm not the only Matt Fitzgerald in the in the world, so yeah, look for the .org.
Okay, great. So everyone who's watching, I'll leave a link down below on where you can connect with Matt. But yes, thank you very much, Matt, for being able to have this interview and spending your precious time to just have a little chat.
Yeah, I appreciate your interest.
Yeah, well, all right. Well, thank you very much.
All right, take care, Ryan.
Yeah.